Hi Sol, this is my second project in UDK that I did at university. It took place over the course of 12 weeks, in which time I did all the code, the 3D modelling, the textures, the particle effects, etc. I'll give you a quick demonstration of the game now. You control the ship down in the middle there, and you do so with the Xbox 360 controller. I'm using the triggers to move left and right, and the joysticks to control the two turrets independently. You fight off waves of enemies and other entities in the level. You've got things like shields and drones which you can activate, and they'll fly around your ship and heal you up. The Kismet to this level isn't overly extensive, but I'll give you a bit of a rundown of that. Up here we've got all the stuff that controls your heads-up display. It hides and shows the elements depending on what you've currently got available, and it does so by linking in with the code and reading the properties in there. Down here we've got a matinee sequence that controls the entry animation of the final boss. I'll link to another video and you can have a flick through that and you might be able to see a bit more of what I'm talking about. This starts the game, sets your inventory, it's fairly straightforward, and this attaches the ship to the player, which you adjust by code so that it appears as though the ship is moving. One of the entities that I programmed up for this, which you can effect in editor, is the initial turret. And I'll start the game, you'll be able to see that right in front of me there. If I shoot that once, you'll see it fires 4 projectiles in a circle, and it does so 3 times. That can all be effected here, so I can set the bullet type. I should have used enumeration here so you can see some text, but at the time I did it numerically. So we'll change the projectile type to 1, it will shoot, let's say 32 bullets, and it will do that twice with a delay of 0.5 of a second. This is all fairly straightforward and simple for the level designers. You can see the model's now changed to reflect which type of projectile is being fired, and that'll now shoot 2 waves of 32 bullets. What I wanted to do before I moved on to other projects was show some more advanced Kismet that I've worked on. This would link to a bot in a single player of Unreal Tournament and would give them some new behaviour and new animations and would affect the gameplay. What would happen as you walk towards the bot, you get within a certain range and it triggers the events that you can see here. The game would slow down gradually to half speed, and the bot would play an animation, there'd be a particle effect go off, some lighting, and it would knock the player character backwards and into a ragdoll mode and deal some damage. This was a project I started working on after university called Cryengine Skies. It was a group project. It was going to be developed for web and for mobile on iOS and Android. We may have extended later on to BlackBerry and Windows 8, but the prime targets were iPhone and Android. I was doing the code for this, and I was mocking up in this scene some of the AI for one of the final bosses. He has several different attack patterns depending on where you're shooting him from, so you might snap up, or if you hang back and shoot him from a distance and he stops flinching, he'll shoot his tongue out at you. You have several different ships. You've got the general fighter, the bomber, which has got a bit of a slower rate of fire but does a bit more damage, and the sniper, who does a faster rate of fire and a little bit less damage. Some of the problems we encountered with this was memory usage. Putting this on mobile, it would start to slow down after a while, so I did a bit of research at the time and I found that with these projectiles in particular, the number that you can ever have on screen, did a bit of math to find out quite how many it takes before they reach the edge of the screen they can disappear, and we developed a pool so it would reuse the I've just been killed there, I've reset the level. It would reuse the projectiles and not keep instantiating them and destroying them over time, so garbage collection would not be an issue. Another problem we faced was the number of draw calls. The ships were broken down into several different components, like the engines, the turrets, the cockpit, the wings, etc. And the idea was that when your ship got destroyed, all these components would break down and they'd go flying quite spectacularly. But all being in separate components, they'd all have to be drawn separately, and on mobile in particular, this caused quite some slowdown. We fixed that by limiting the number of components, and they were only created during the destruction of the ship. so during gameplay the ship is all one component. So I hope you can excuse the quality of this setup. I don't have the project files on my machine anymore. A project I worked on commercially was called Homebear. I can demonstrate this here on my tablet. It's a children's game, and I did all the programming for this again. This was about a 6-7 week project. There's several stages. I'll just load up this one. The idea of the game is you have your little bear character, and he's going to move from the start of the level over to the end of the level, and you click and drag little objects in, such as a ladder, and as he approaches that he'll climb it, and you collect the keys and you progress. Some of the things I worked on in this were the progression system. If I just go back to the main menu and load this one up, you can see when you've gathered 3 keys you unlock the next section. You need 20 keys to unlock these and 30 keys to unlock the later ones. Currently you've got 14. There was a game analytics system in this which communicated with the server of the company, and every time you load the game it would take statistics of how long you played it for. Your progression was like how many people have completed each level, so that you can get an idea of, if there's a difficulty spike somewhere along the game, people will stop playing, so you adjust that level and solve some of the puzzles for it. There was about 3 or 4 level designers on this project, and I produced some tools within Unity to speed some of this up. For example, you can see everything's in a grid-based system. I produced a grid framework effectively in Unity so that you could just drag and drop the components in and fill out large block sections of the level. An application I've worked on fairly recently, this is not so much of a games project, but I've got a few friends who work in a coffee shop, and their ordering system there is a bit crude. Everything's been written down on a piece of paper, so I whipped together this application for them, and you can just quickly order several sets of drinks, coffee, decaf, black, and a hot water, an Americano, decaf, set that up to table 5, and it will queue all these up into the system, tea, coffee, table 6, and you can work on 2 orders at the same time, and signal that you're working on one, working on the other, and when it's gone out, it will clear from the system. I'll just add a couple more so you can see that. Let's have a couple of decaf coffees, table 7. And you can see it all queues up and it clears off, and the next one will be there. And it calculates the orders and keeps it all compact. Of the last 2 projects I want to show you, this one was a bit of a hobby of mine a couple of months ago. I was getting really interested into quadcopters and FPV, which is first person view. You set up a remote camera on the front of a remote control drone, and you can fly it around and look through the camera through the Oculus Rift or any other set of virtual reality goggles that you've got. I linked up the PS3 controller to my phone for this, as the accelerometer controls don't quite give you enough control, and worked on some of the flight stabilization and sort of radio controls. One of the things you have with the flight radio is you get fine sensitivity in the middle of the joystick and quite exaggerated controls towards the top or the outer limits of your control. So I manipulated a quadratic curve for that in order to get the fine control needed. If I just set the camera view to first person, I am rather out of practice at this, but we'll see what we can do. No, I'm upside down. The final project I want to show you is my fire propagation system. It was going to be as a third-party plugin for Unity, so that other developers could have this script. They drag and drop it into their project, and it's pretty much set, ready to go. If you're familiar with Far Cry 3, when you, say, throw a Molotov into the foliage in the environment, it ignites and it starts to burn, and that burning will spread through all the nearby foliage. The way my system works is it generates a grid and it maps it to the terrain based on the density of your foliage, and all this can be specified. For example, if you only want the dense foliage to burn, you'll set quite a high number, but stuff more towards the edges, I don't know if you can see it here, unfortunately at the moment it's quite small, I'm afraid, will not burn as far. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed looking through my projects. There's a lot more I've got that I can show you. If you call me down tomorrow and it gets to that stage, I can bring some of that with me. as you can see, you've caught me a bit of a rush transitional period to get this portfolio together for you. Caught me about a week later, it would have been all up live on my website, and I'd have just linked you to that. But I hope you like what you've seen. Hopefully see you tomorrow. Look forward to seeing where this goes. Thank you.